Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about transportation, more specifically getting from the Walt Disney World Swan and Dolphin and Swan Reserve to Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, and basically anywhere else on Walt Disney World property. So this question comes to us from Steve, who commented on one of our videos. I will link that video that he was talking to me through. I'll link that video that he commented on in the description box below, because that's a great video if you're thinking about visiting Disney, you're wondering about transportation. So he had some questions specifically about getting to Magic Kingdom, and I answered those questions via a response to his comment, but I wanted to take some time to go a little bit deeper into this topic as a whole, because there's a lot to know. And since Steve and his girlfriend have an upcoming trip, which I'm very excited for you because I think you're going to love staying in the EPCOT area. If you don't already know how great it is to stay in the EPCOT area anyway, I want you to have the best trip possible. I want that for everyone. So I figured I would sit down and we would chat about transportation and hopefully work everything out so that you have an idea of what to expect. So let's start off with the basics. We're talking about the Walt Disney World Swan, Dolphin, and Swan Reserve. These are Disney hotels, but they're not officially Disney hotels. They're on property and they share some Walt Disney World transportation with other deluxe resorts in the EPCOT area. But there are some differences. Some of those distinct differences are going to be centered around transportation. Now, in his comment, Steve asks specifically about getting to Magic Kingdom from the Dolphin. He says that he heard that if you take the bus from the Dolphin, you end up at the Ticket and Transportation Center trying to get to Magic Kingdom, but that you could walk from the Dolphin to the boardwalk in order to take one of those buses and arrive closer to the Magic Kingdom entrance. So we're going to cover this first. Yes, if you take the bus from the Swan Dolphin or Swan Reserve, you're going to end up dropped off at the Ticket and Transportation Center. Now, the Ticket and Transportation Center, also known as the TTC, is basically the Magic Kingdom parking lot. And once you arrive at the Ticket and Transportation Center, you're going to have to decide which form of transportation you're going to take to get across the water and to the Magic Kingdom. You have the option of taking the monorail, or you can take a ferry boat. Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you. When I was staying at the Swan, this is the exact thought process that I had. I was like, I'm not gonna get on a bus to go to the Ticket and Transportation Center to get on another mode of transportation to go to Magic Kingdom when all I have to do is walk to the boardwalk and get on one of those buses and then get dropped off right at the bus depot that is like right at the entrance of Magic Kingdom. That was the first thing that came to mind. But for science, I wanted to give it a try and just see how it went. And I am delighted to tell you that taking the bus from the Swan, Dolphin, or Swan Reserve to get to Magic Kingdom is super easy, and it honestly doesn't take that much work. It sounds like it's a lot of walking, it sounds like it's a lot of extra time, but I'm not convinced that it actually is. I have not timed it myself, but my experience is that it's really not that big a deal to take the bus from the Swan Dolphin or Swan Reserve to Magic Kingdom via the Ticket and Transportation Center. So here's why. When you take the bus from Swan Dolphin, Swan Reserve, you don't have to do a whole lot of walking in order to get to the bus stop. It's usually a pretty short walk. So you go ahead, you have a short walk, you sit there for a minute and wait for the bus. Once you get on the bus and arrive at the Ticket and Transportation Center, which doesn't take that long, you're dropped off not very far from the Ticket and Transportation Center entrance, and it's a very short walk. I mean, very short walk from that to either the monorail or the ferry boat. Then once you get off the monorail or the ferry boat, you're basically right at the entrance of Magic Kingdom. So you're not doing a whole lot of walking. It doesn't take as much time as you might think. But there's an extra perk that I wasn't thinking about, and it actually makes the process a lot easier. So once you arrive at the Ticket and Transportation Center, you're going to have to go through security. So you're going to go through those like metal scanner things, and then you may have to have your bag checked depending on what you have in your bag. I think we've talked about how to make that process easier in the past, but we'll talk a little bit more about it some other time. But anyway, once you do that, once you've gone through security, you don't have to go through it again. So you can actually save a little bit of time. At least it feels like you save some time, in my opinion, as opposed to arriving at the depot, the bus depot in front of Magic Kingdom, and then having to walk all the way through security and then get into the theme park that way. So it might be a toss-up, but suffice to say, you have options. And taking the bus to Magic Kingdom from the Swan Dolphin or Swan Reserve isn't really that big a deal. Now, of course, you also have the option of walking from the Swan Dolphin or Swan Reserve over to one of the nearby Disney resorts and taking Disney transportation to get to the park. The pro for this is going to be that you will be dropped much closer to Magic Kingdom, but you're still going to have to go through security once you arrive. And there are some downsides, at least in my opinion. So here they are. First and foremost, the walk to the Disney resorts is still going to be a lengthy walk. It's still going to take time. So I would bet, again, I haven't tried this and maybe I will during my next trip, but I would bet that you're going to spend about the same amount of time walking from your room to the bus of the nearby Disney resort of your choosing as you would if you just took the ferry boat or the monorail. Like I said, I can't say that definitively. We'll have to do some research on that, but it seems like it's going to probably be a bit of a toss-up. Another thing that you want to be aware of is how crowded the Disney buses can be. I'm sure that the Swan Dolphin and Swan Reserve buses can get pretty crowded too, but Disney buses, they seem like they are constantly filled with people. So that's something you want to be aware of, especially if you're going to be making the trek all the way from your resort to one of those Disney resorts in order to catch a bus. There might be a lot of other people trying to do exactly the same thing, and that might actually be a disadvantage as opposed to saving you any time. But there's another thing to be aware of if you're going to be making the walk to a nearby Disney resort in order to catch a Disney bus. And that is that if you're staying at the Dolphin, the boardwalk might not be the resort you want to walk to. While the boardwalk is the go-to for a lot of people, the reality is if you're staying at the Dolphin and you're in a room that's anywhere other than right at the front near the boat launch, you're probably going to want to head to the Yacht Club instead. So if you think of the EPCOT area resorts, it's kind of like V-shaped. And the Swan and Dolphin are down here. The Swan is over on this side by the boardwalk, and the Dolphin is over on this side by the Yacht and Beach Club. Of course, the Yacht Club is the closest, and both the Yacht Club and the Beach Club have their own bus stops. So if it were me and I was going to be walking to a Disney bus in order to get out of my resort, like get out to one of the theme parks, I would be walking to the Yacht Club and getting on a bus there versus walking all the way across to the Swan and then all the way from the Swan to the boardwalk, then halfway across the boardwalk in order to get to the bus there. Because that boardwalk bus stop is a little bit out of the way. So just something to be aware of. I mean, unless you're planning on going to the boardwalk to get breakfast at the Boardwalk Bakery or one of those restaurants, I don't personally think that going to the boardwalk is the way to go. They also have other options if you wanted something grab and go at the Yacht Club. They have, I think it's called the Market at Ale and Compass. You can go, you can mobile order from there, you can grab some breakfast there too. So, just find the place that's closest to you before you make the decision, because you could really add a lot of extra steps onto your day that you really don't need. So for me personally, when I did this trip and stayed at the Swan, I did not take any other resort transportation in order to get away from the Swan. So every time I wanted to get to Animal Kingdom or Magic Kingdom, I just walked down to the lobby, went to the bus stop, and I took whatever bus I needed. I didn't like go out of my way to go elsewhere. And this worked out really well for me, even though, like I said, I was kind of anti this at the beginning. I was like, no, I'll just, grab a drink and walk on to one of the resorts. I never did that. However, on the flip side, I never took the Swan and Dolphin transportation to get back to the Swan. I always took Disney transportation. And the reason for that is kind of simple. When you check in, you get a piece of paper that tells you all the information you need to know about transportation, and they have information about where to catch the bus back to the Swan. But I knew how easy it would be to use Disney transportation, and so rather than dealing with trying to figure out how to make that work, I actually just took a Disney bus back to one of the Disney resorts, and then from there made my way back to the Swan rather than having to deal with the Swan bus. And I did this the entire time I was there as well. I never tried to look for the Swan bus. I never tried to figure out where it picked up. I just went, hey, I'm going to take one of the Disney buses back. And there's a huge advantage to doing this, and that is that you have two options to get back to your resort rather than one. So if you go to the bus depots, generally speaking, although it's not always the case, I'm not sure if it's the case at Animal Kingdom or not, I'm trying to think about it. Generally speaking, the Yacht and Beach Club as well as Boardwalk bus stops are usually pretty close together. So what I like to do is I like to head that direction, and I'll decide what resort I'm going to take the bus to once I get there. If there's a really long line for the Yacht Club and Beach Club, I'll take the Boardwalk bus. If there's a really long line for the Boardwalk, I'll head to Yacht and Beach. Sometimes one of the buses comes before the other, and I will leave one line and go into the next just to get where I'm going faster. And if I want to make the walk all the way back to the Swan, I can totally do that. But I can also take the boat to get back to the Swan as well, because there are friendship boats that kind of make their way to all of the resorts. So that's a great option. It's one that you can definitely take advantage of. And that's kind of why we're having this conversation, because there are lots of transportation options you can use to get where you want to go faster and easier than relying solely on the Swan and Dolphin transportation. So I hope that along with the comment that I made in response to your comment, answers your question, Steve. I hope that kind of gets you where you're going as far as what it is that you wanted to know. But here are a few other things that I think are worth keeping in mind. So like I said, if you're going to head to the Ticket and Transportation Center to make your way over to Magic Kingdom, you have multiple options. My suggestion is either to go with the ferry boat, which is a lot of fun, or you can go with the monorail, which is kind of iconic. What I like to do is look and see where the lines are. As soon as you get through security, you can see if there's going to be a line for the monorail. Keep an eye out for that express monorail. That's the one that's going to bring you directly to Magic Kingdom. It's going to take the least amount of time, and it's going to get you where you want to be. Of course, the ferry boat is a great option as well. I often take the ferry boat option because I just like being in like the open air, big space, as opposed to being kind of crammed into a monorail. That's a personal preference thing. I don't know if there's a difference between the time. I know that there are people who will say the monorail takes a lot less time. Some people say the ferry boat takes a lot less time. It really just depends, I think. Maybe in the future we'll have to do some experiments with that as well. But you do have two options available to you, and either one of them is pretty good. Another thing that I think is worth noting if you're going to be taking the bus to Animal Kingdom. Now, I know you didn't mention Animal Kingdom, but since you're staying at the Dolphin, I think it's worth mentioning. You are going to be dropped off in the parking lot. I'm not sure if I mentioned that already. And it can seem a little intimidating to get dropped off in what seems like the middle of nowhere, but just follow the flow of people. You're actually not that far from the entrance. You're super close, so don't worry about it. You'll be there in no time. So we talked about Magic Kingdom, we talked about Animal Kingdom. What about everywhere else? So we know that EPCOT and Hollywood Studios are within walking distance of the Swan and Dolphin, as well as all the EPCOT area resorts. So you can actually just walk if you'd like to. That's a great option. There are also boats. So they're called the friendship boats, and they are located super conveniently in between the Swan and Dolphin. So you can jump on a friendship boat and get to Hollywood Studios, EPCOT. You're also going to end up going to Boardwalk and Yacht and Beach Club, Yacht and Beach Club being the same stop on that boat. So if you want to just get to another location around the area, you can take the friendship boats without having to walk. It does take a little bit more time, but I mean, when your feet are aching, your feet are aching, you know, especially when you're at the end of the day or in the middle of the day and you just want to cut a few extra minutes, cut a little bit of walking off of your time, you can jump on a boat. One of the things I like to do, especially when I am heading to EPCOT from the Swan and Dolphin, is I like to get on the boat and I will get off at the Yacht and Beach Club. It's only about a 5-minute walk from the boat launch, but it's about 15 minutes, give or take, depending on how busy the day is and depending on if anyone needs special assistance getting on the boats, to go from the Yacht and Beach Club to the boardwalk, then from the boardwalk to EPCOT. So that's just something to keep in mind. I almost always get off at the Yacht and Beach Club and then walk the rest of the way. But, you know, depends on how you're feeling, depends on what you want to do. The last tip I have is about getting elsewhere on Walt Disney World property. Now, I find it a little bit confusing getting from the Swan and Dolphin to other places around Walt Disney World. Of course, you can take a Lyft, you can take an Uber, whatever, but I like to save a little bit of money and I like to explore a little bit, so I tend to use other options. Again, Walt Disney World transportation. Now, I'm not just talking about going the obvious route. So for example, you can absolutely walk over to the yacht club or to the boardwalk and get on a bus to Disney Springs. But there are some other options that you can take advantage of, especially if you're already out for the day. So let's say you're at Magic Kingdom, you're at Hollywood Studios, you're at EPCOT, and you want to go to Disney Springs. You don't have to try and find a Disney Springs bus in order to get there. You can head to one of the nearby resorts. So in the case of Disney Springs, for example, if I'm at Magic Kingdom and I want to head on over to Disney Springs for lunch, I'm not going to go back to my resort. I'm not going to call a Lyft. I'm going to get on the Saratoga Springs Resort bus, because Saratoga Springs is not only walking distance from Disney Springs, but it also has direct boat transportation from Saratoga Springs to Disney Springs. Now, there are a lot of different resorts like this, and I want to help you figure out what they are. So I've actually put together a little cheat sheet that shows you where you can head if you want to head somewhere else. I know that sounds super confusing, but hopefully if you open up this cheat sheet, you can take a look and you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. I'll also have a link down in the description box down below where you can go ahead and head on over to twofoolishmortals.com and take a screenshot or download or whatever this cheat sheet, keep it on your phone, and it'll help you figure out how to get where you're going while you're at Walt Disney World. I know it's a lot, I know it's a little bit confusing, but especially if you have a plan for where you want to go and you don't want to make any additional steps in order to get there, maybe you don't want to opt for a ride share, this might be an option that helps you out. Whew, we have been talking for a bit. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to add to this discussion. I don't think so. I think the big takeaway is just make sure you're aware of your options before you head out. Steve, you're doing a great job. You're starting in the right place, doing a bunch of research and trying to figure out how to get where you're going so that you don't run into issues. Of course, if you have any additional questions, feel free to put them down in the comments, and either I or some other fellow mortal out there will help you figure out what it is you need to know or what you want to know. Either way, but I hope that this is a bit of a start. I know we kind of went on for a little while. I didn't realize that we were going to be talking so long, but there's a lot to say. So thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope that this was helpful, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you in the comments soon. Until next time, bye.